The Women's Petition Against Coffee by Anonymous. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Rosie. The Women's Petition Against Coffee by Anonymous. LibriVox Coffee Break Collection Number 6. The Women's Petition Against Coffee, representing to public consideration the grand inconveniences accruing to their sex from the excessive use of that drying and feebling liquor. Presented to the Right Honourable the Keepers of the Liberty of Venus, by A. Well Willer. London, printed 1674. To the Right Honourable the Keepers of the Liberties of Venus, the Worshipful Court of Female Assistants, etc., the humble petitions and address of several thousands of buxom good women languishing in extremity of want, showeth that since 'tis reckoned amongst the glories of our native country to be a paradise for women, the fame in our apprehensions can consist in nothing more than the brisk activity of our men, who in former ages were justly esteemed the ablest performers in Christendom. But to our unspeakable grief, we find of late a very sensible decay of that true old English vigour, our gallants being every way so Frenchified that they are become mere cock-sparrows, fluttering things that come on sa-sa with a world of fury, but are not able to stand to it, and in the very first charge fall down flat before us. Never did men wear greater breeches or carry less in them of any metal whatsoever. There was a glorious dispensation, 'twas surely in the golden age, when lusty lads of 700 or 800 years old got sons and daughters. And we have read how a prince of Spain was forced to make a law that men should not repeat the grand kindness to their wives above 9 times a night. But, alas, alas! Those forward days are gone. The dull lubbers want a spur now rather than a bridle, being so far from doing any works of supererogation, that we find them not capable of performing those devoirs which their duty and our expectations exact. The occasion of which insufferable disaster, after a furious enquiry and discussion of the point by the learned of the faculty, we can attribute to nothing more than the excessive use of that new-fangled, abominable, heathenish liquor called coffee, which riffling nature of her choicest treasures, and drawing up the radical moisture, has so eunuched our husbands, and cripple our more kind gallants, that they are become as impotent as age, and as unfruitful as those desarts whence that unhappy berry is said to be brought. For the continual flipping of this pitiful drink is enough to bewitch men of 22 and tie up the codpiece points without a charm. It renders them that us it as lean as famine, as rivalled as envy, or an old meagre hag overridden by an incubus. They come from it with nothing moist but their snotty noses, nothing stiff but their joints, nor standing but their ears. They pretend 'twill keep them waking, but we find by scurvy experience they sleep quietly enough after it. A betrothed queen might trust herself abed with one of them, without the nice caution of a sword between them. Nor can call all the art we use revive them from this lethargy, so unfit they are for action, that like young train band-men, when called upon duty, their ammunition is wanting. Peradventure they present, but cannot give fire, or at least do but flash in the pan, instead of doing executions. Nor let any doting, superstitious Catos shake their goatish beards, and task us of immodesty for this declaration, since 'tis a public grievance, and cries aloud for reformation. Weight and measures, 'tis well known, should go throughout the world, and there is no torment like famishment. Experience witnesses our damage, and necessity, which easily supersedes all the laws of decency, justifies our complaints. For can any woman of sense or spirit endure with patience that when privileged by legal ceremonies, she approaches the nuptial bed, expecting a man that with sprightly embraces should answer the vigour of her flames, she on the contrary should only meet a bed full of bones, and hug a meagre useless corpse rendered as sapless as a Kix, and drier than a pumice stone, by the perpetual fumes of tobacco, and bewitching effects of this most pernicious coffee, whereby nature is enfeebled, the offspring of our mighty ancestors dwindled into a succession of apes and pygmies, and the age of man, now cramped into an inch that was a span. Nor is this, though more than enough, all the ground of our complaint, for besides we have reason to apprehend and grow jealous, that men by frequenting these Stygian tap-houses, will usurp on our prerogative of tattling, and soon learn to exceed us in talkativeness, a quality wherein our sex has ever claimed preeminence. For here, like so many frogs in a puddle, they sup muddy water, and murmur insignificant notes, till half a dozen of them outbabble an equal number of us at gossiping, talking all at once in confusion, and running from point to point as insensibly and swiftly as ever the ingenious pole-wheel could run divisions on the bass viol. Yet, in all their prattle, every one abounds in his own sense as stiffly as a Quaker at the late Barbican dispute, and submits to the reasons of no other mortal, so that there being neither moderator nor rules observed, you must as soon fill a quart-pot with syllogisms as profit by their discourses. Certainly, our countrymen's palates are become as fantastical as their brains. How else is it possible they should apostatize from the good old primitive way of ale drinking, to run a whoring after such variety of destructive foreign liquors, to trifle away their time, scald their chops, and spend their money, all for a little base, black, thick, nasty, bitter, stinking, nauseous puddle water? Yet, as all witches have their charms, so this ugly Turkish enchantress, by certain invisible viers, attracts both rich and poor, so that those have a scarce twopence to buy their children bread must spend a penny each evening in this insipid stuff. Nor can we send one of our husbands to call a midwife, or borrow a glister pipe, but he must stay an hour by the way, drinking his 2 dishes and 2 pipes. At these houses, as at the springs in Afric, meet all sorts of animals, whence follows the production of 1,000 monster opinions and absurdities. Yet, for being dangerous to government, we dare to be their compurgators, as well knowing them to be too tame and too talkative to make any desperate politicians. For though they may now and then destroy a fleet, or kill 10,000 of the French, more than all the Confederates can do, yet this is still in their politic capacities, for by their personal valor they are scarce fit to be of the life-guard to a cherry-tree, and therefore, though they frequently have hot contests about most important subjects, as what color the Red Sea is of, whether the Great Turk be a Lutheran or a Calvinist, who Cain's father-in-law was, etc., yet they never fight about them with any other save our weapon, the tongue. Some of our sots pretend tippling of this boiled soot cures them of being drunk, but we have reason rather to conclude it makes them so, because we find them not able to stand after it. 'Tis at best but a kind of earthing a fox to hunt him more eagerly afterward, a rare method of good husbandry to enable a man to be drunk 3 times a day. Just such a remedy for drunkenness, as the Pope's allowing of stews, is a means to prevent fornication. The coffee-house being, in truth, only a pimp to the tavern, a relishing foop preparative to a fresh debauch. For when people have swilled themselves with a morning draught of more ale than a brewer's horse can carry, hither they come for a pennyworth of settle-brain, when they are sure to meet enow lazy pragmatical companions that resort here to prattle of news that they neither understand nor are concerned in. And after an hour's impertinent chat, begin to consider a bottle of claret would do excellent well before dinner, whereupon to the bush they all march together, till every one of them is as drunk as a drum, and then back again to the coffee-house to drink themselves sober, where 3 or 4 dishes apiece, and smoking, makes their throats as dry as Mount Etna inflamed with brimflame, for that they must away to the next red lattice, to quench them with a dozen or 2 of ale, which at last, growing nauseous, one of them begins to extol the blood of the grape, what rare langoon and racy canary may be had at the Mitre. Sayest thou so? Cries another. Let's then go and replenish there with our earthen vessels. So once more they troop to the sack-shop till they are drunker than before, and then by a retrograde motion stagger back to soberize themselves with coffee. Thus, like tennis balls between 2 rackets, the fops our husbands are bandied to and fro all day between the coffee-house and tavern, whilst we poor souls sit moping all alone till 12 at night, and when at last they come to bed, fenoked like a Westphalia hogshead, we have no more comfort of them than from a shotten herring or a dried bulrush, which forces us to take up this lamentation and sing, Tom Farthing, where hast thou been, Tom Farthing? 12 o'clock ere you come in, 2 o'clock ere you begin, and then at last can do nothing, would make a woman weary, weary would make a woman weary, etc. Wherefore, the premises considered, and to the end that our just rights may be restored, and all the ancient privileges of our sex preserved inviolable, that our husbands may give us some other testimonial of their being men besides their beards and wearing of empty pantaloons, that they no more run the hazard of being cuckolded by dildos, but returning to the good old strengthening liquors of our forefathers, that nature's exchequer may once again be replenished, and a race of lusty heres begot, able by their achievements to equal the glories of our ancestors. We humbly pray that you, our trusty patrons, would improve your interest, that henceforth the drinking coffee may on severe penalties be forbidden to all persons under the age of 60, and that instead thereof lusty nappy beer, cock ale, cordial canaries, restoring malagos, and back-recruiting chokehold be recommended to general use throughout the utopian territories. In hopes of which glorious reformation, your petitioners shall readily prostrate themselves, and ever pray, etc. Finis. End of The Women's Petition Against Coffee. Recording by Rosie.